This podcast is brought to you by Lucky the Cat. A simple ad for a simple cat. Perfectly serviceable. If you need a cat, well, worse ones exist. Lucky the Cat. Yep, she's a cat all right. Welcome to Little, Middle, and Biggle. I'm your middle brother, Joshua.
I'm your biggle brother, Noah.
And I'm Grandma Rita.
Yay, we have Grandma Rita on the podcast, woo! And we are the ones who will try our best to answer the little, middle, and biggle questions we all have in life. So today we are joined by our very own Grandma Rita. Say hello, Grandma Rita.
Hello.
Would you like to introduce yourself, give us some background on who you are besides just Grandma Extraordinaire?
Well, I'm Grandma Rita. I've been Grandma Rita for quite a long time.
27 years?
27 years.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I just realized this is my 65th anniversary from high school graduation.
Whoa.
Old.
That is crazy. That actually dovetails wonderfully into my little question. We didn't even plan this, but this is great. So summarize your high school experience in 10 words or less.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. But as painful as the high school experience is, gotta confront it. So, in 10 words, I'm going to try and make it a sentence. Very confusing, awkward to the extreme, also sometimes bad romances.
Oh, no.
Ooh, man, that took a lot more effort than I thought it was going to take. So there's my 10-word summary. Any questions or comments on that?
Oh, my.
That is, I mean, the first comment that comes to mind is, this is a question that is built 100% for you. Because your ability
thanks.
to spin words is far superior to my own.
And mine.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
my.
I'd love to hear what you guys have to say though. So please go for it.
Did you just kind of come up with that on the fly?
Yeah,
more or less?
I didn't have an answer in mind when I started asking it, so I kind of panicked. I probably could have done better if I had some forewarning.
That's
But
okay.
now we'll just be all on even playing field, you know. So
Yeah,
who wants to go next?
Closer to even.
Go ahead, and Noah.
Yeah.
Whichever
Yeah, you
branch
can
I'll
tell
do.
it's Grandma Rita.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I'm just going to make it up as I go.
Perfect.
Study? Nah. Practice? Meh. Video games? Yeah. That's a 7. Oops, try hard.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that you got the oops try hard in at the end.
And better luck next time.
Yeah.
Just like real high school.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about practice, did you mean like cello practice or like tennis practice?
That was my question.
Ooh, I was thinking of cello, but yes to both. That would have been, both would have been true. Tennis, there wasn't quite as much of like a push to try hard at tennis because it was like, we played every day anyways during freshman year. And then like I just, was on the JV team. So we just kind of hung out and did like a tournament every now and then. And it was just kind of for fun.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was very fun.
Good.
Yeah. It just, I think it was just always something that I was like, I could work really hard and get a lot better at this, but it's just definitely not at all what I'm going to do with my life. And it's just kind of fun to do. So,
Neat.
yeah.
That's interesting to me that you say you don't feel like you really practice that hard. Because, I don't know, maybe this is just because I had to get up so early every few mornings when you were in high school because we had to take you to the tennis court before school, like an hour before school. Yeah. I say get up really early. I had to get up at like 6:30.
Yeah, which is nothing for Joshua now.
Yeah.
Literally
right.
like
That was-
2.5 hours later than I get up now. But yeah, I always got the impression that you were like tennis master.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
I wasn't terrible, but
I guess
but
it
I
was
mean,
just
I just-
little brother goggles.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was a little brother.
Well,
It's like,
Grandma goggles are pick Noah up at so-and-so at, what was the name of that park?
Oh gosh.
I don't remember.
It wasn't John Stiff, was it? Austin
No,
Park, maybe?
Austin. It was
Austin.
Yeah,
Austin.
okay.
Yeah, it was Austin.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I got lost several times going over there.
Yeah.
But it was always fun picking you guys up because I got to talk to you.
That's so great to know that you didn't just like dread those experiences. I always felt really bad when you had to pick us up from school because I thought, wow, she probably has so many much better things to do with her time.
I felt really bad actually after you guys got big enough that I didn't have to pick you up.
Oh,
it was a very sad day.
You can come pick me up from medical school someday if you want.
I will do that.
Awesome. That sounds great. Yeah. Okay, Grandma Rita, can you summarize your high school experience in 10 words or less?
Well, it's interesting that that is the question because just this week, as I said before, this is our 65th anniversary, but just this week, one of my classmates who has everybody's email and always sends us notes whenever anything happens in our class, sent a message that one of our classmates, Beverly, had passed away with COVID-19, the first one in our class, which got us kind of a discussion or conversation going about what life was like now. And we never dreamed we'd end up in 2020 with it looking like this.
Yeah.
And
what a weird year.
So one of the guys has started reminiscing about what segregation was like back in our day.
Oh, wow.
And what it looked like and what we felt about it. And so that is something that has influenced my thinking these days. My high school adventure was an adventure because I was a country kid. And I went from a school with four students in my class to 42 or thereabouts. I can't remember for sure. But there were tough times. There was a lot of time getting used to the other kids because there were groups of them that came from different Catholic schools. And fortunately, my cousin went too, so we weren't totally alone. But otherwise, we would have been the only one who wasn't in a group. But for the most part, high school was high school. And it was I was the oldest, the first one who went for my family. Had a lot to learn, but I liked it.
Oh, good.
I liked learning all that stuff, and I liked meeting the kids. Sometimes, like I said, it wasn't pleasant because high school kids are high school kids. But,
yeah.
But it was good.
Cool. So can you put that all into 10 words?
Oh, no, she already did. I caught it. It was, but for the most part, high school was high school.
Actually,
I think
that pretty much nails it. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
And everybody has an idea of high school.
Oh, yeah. That was really great and interesting to hear. I didn't realize that you, went to such a tiny elementary school, but also went to an equally tiny high school by high school standards.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a big class compared to the elementary school.
Yeah,
yes,
the 42.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I definitely had that same adjustment period. I'm sure you both remember when I went to high school from a class of 20-some to, 436, I think I graduated with. Yeah. So I guess as far as like proportional increases, I may have had you beat.
Yeah, you did.
But I think also probably there is not exactly a linear relationship between amount of culture shock and amount of people that you have in your elementary school. Because like 4 people in your elementary school, you get I imagine you get pretty much no differing opinions. It's pretty much like, yep, you're on the farm next to mine.
Yep, that's
Cool.
right. The only difference is, of course, it was a all-grade school, so all the grades were in the room. And I actually learned a lot more socialization and adjusting to younger and older groups as I was going through it. So I think it was a better variety of adjustments.
What was the biggest age range that you had in there at any one point? Because I imagine there wasn't always like a kindergartner and an 8th grader. There were probably like
There was always a first grader and an eighth grader.
Oh, okay. Did you not have
and
kindergarten?
all the grades in between? No, kindergarten wasn't a thing back then.
Oh, wow. That's really strange to think about. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, you really always had that push to socialize with people outside your group. That's really interesting. Yes. That is incredibly interesting to me. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
That's cool.
Noah, would you take us away with the middle question, please?
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering, out of all the places that you've worked, whether that is like a big career job or like a summer internship or, anything, what is your favorite place that you've worked or job that you've worked in, and why?
Okay. Go for it.
I would say, I guess it's pretty much between doing, freelance 3D graphics and working in the ER. Those are kind of my big ones.
And also the tennis place.
Oh yeah, and the tennis place. That was fun. But
yeah,
it was not a life-changing experience. Except it was my first job. So it was good.
Yeah.
I would have thought that doing 3D graphics like on a professional level would be like my favorite thing because it's just a fun thing to do. But it was just kind of not as fun as it is to do without a schedule and without someone like overseeing what you're doing. Like it's much more fun for me to do art with with just complete creative freedom. Even though there were some things that were cool about doing it professionally, which mostly just had to do with working with another person. But with like working in the ER, doing it professionally was one, like legally the only way to do.
Yes, definitely.
So that kind of makes that, the best option. And two, like doing it on a, like even like in the experience I've had on a very, low level professional level was super cool because it felt like instead of that taking away from the experience, it added to it because it was like on a higher level than just, than anything that you could do without it being on a professional level. Besides all like, legality aside, it was just cool to do. I don't know. That would be my favorite, would be the ER.
Cool.
It's definitely a very fun, rich experience.
So follow-up question, did you prefer regular scribe or chief scribe?
Oh, man. Regular. Yeah, I will never work in administration of any sort ever again.
Yeah, I kind of suspected that was the case, but I just wanted to...
Yeah. And I certainly second that.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was a good thing to have done. And man, I will never ever do it again. Yeah.
Grandma Rita, would you like to go next?
I will. I have a question for Noah.
Okay, go for it.
Do you think that it was the working with people that made it more rewarding, interesting, whatever, in the two jobs? You talked about the
computer stuff
and the working in the emergency room. Do you think that having it with people made a difference in the way you felt about it?
Yes, definitely. That was, I think the people that I work with in the ER, whether that's patients or staff, probably were the biggest, like one of the best things about it, And then of course there's all the medicine and everything is super cool, and just getting to be a massive nerd about stuff and it somehow like helps someone. And then with 3D graphics, like working with someone was super cool. It was really exciting, like bring someone's idea to life. But then everything else about it was, less fun because it would be
technical.
Like, more technical and more just, oh, well, this thing, this isn't the most exciting project to do, or this isn't the most exciting part of this, but like it needs to be done for this, product design or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I can also imagine
people
that
definitely the biggest.
It would be really difficult as a 3D graphics designer not having the people around who like recognize when you do something really difficult. Like if you get this like incredibly smooth surface and it's got like thousands of triangles on it, and you've spent like hours working on like the cheek of a frog or something to make it look as smooth and glossy and perfect as possible, and you finish it and you stare at it on your screen and you're like, I did that, and nobody will ever know that it took me 6 hours of my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be a real hard thing.
Yeah. A lot of it was like more like on the front end. It was like, people would go, they'd think, they'd be trying to figure out, how much time something would take and like how much money it would cost and everything. And a lot of times they'd think of something that was super easy as it was going to be like ultra hard. Like, oh, can you change the color on that real fast? Like, is that going to take a lot of time? Like, no, that takes like 2 seconds. But then they'll be like, oh yeah, and you can just like, so you just made that thing. So can you just like build this one real fast? Like, if it was like an airplane, it's like, well, the airplane's already there. So can you just like make a spaceship real fast or something? Or,
Oh gosh.
it's like, no, that's not a perfect example, but there was definitely a lack of understanding on what took more time, what took less time.
Yeah.
I think that's true in almost any profession.
Yeah.
Any
job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you're really good at it and you make it look kind of easy, and people who haven't a clue don't recognize what was the hard part.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Most people were very nice about it too. Like, that was actually, I got to work with people from all over the world doing that, which was
that's amazing.
The people again. People were definitely a good part of both of those. Cool. Anyways, okay,
Grandma Rita, please take it away.
I have to do the question now.
No, you have to answer Noah's first. Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, my job.
Because you've done a few things. That's what made me think of this.
Yeah. Just list them off, just to get the brain juices flowing.
Well, the first job I ever did and got paid for, because I did lots of jobs on the farm, but I was a what would you call not exactly a secretary, an employee in an office that kept track of all the expenses at the commissary office on Fort Leavenworth.
Oh wow.
But I was just one of many employees, and we kept all the invoices up and all that kind of stuff. Boring to me.
I can see that.
But it was a good job because it was a civil service job, and it was the summer between high school and going off to nurses training. So it was good, made good money at that time, and it was tolerable. So that was my first one. But that's basically, it was tolerable. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't stimulating at all.
Yeah.
After that it was nurses training. Nurses training was kind of started out like school and ended up kind of like job, because it's a lot like medical school. You end up taking care of people and stuff that's what you're going to end up doing. Which of course I liked, because I liked nursing and I liked all the information. I've always been an information nut, so the more I learned, the better.
Yeah.
The happier I was.
You're in good company. Yeah.
So, nurses training. Right out of nurses training, I got a job at the VA hospital in Wadsworth, which is near Leavenworth. Was interesting. It was challenging because there were a lot of people for not too many people to take care of. So it was very challenging. The physicians there were good at helping, at teaching, at letting you know what was going on, that sort of thing. So I liked that too. I did some at the VA in Kansas City for a short while. And in between that, I got married, and then I worked in the operating room at Lawrence Memorial Hospital in Lawrence. And I always liked the surgery. I always liked the operating room, what we did and all of that. I found it challenging and very, very interesting. That was what I specialized in nurses training. So it was I was going in that direction.
Any particular kind of surgery?
It was all general surgery, and we did every kind. I actually did. We had one surgeon at Providence where I was training, and he did one who did brain surgery, and one of them who did an open heart surgery, and I got to scrub on both of those.
Wow!
Which back in that day was. I mean, we still didn't even do code blues when I was in nursing training. So I found that really interesting, but you had to be really on your toes and efficient and that sort of thing, and that was good, But I have to say, my favorite job was when I went to work and went into anesthesia with Dr. Tetzloff. He asked me to join the group, and I don't know how he decided to ask me, but I was enthused about it. Unfortunately, it was a time when I had one little one and soon another one on the way. So I didn't finish school, but school was actually work. And so I learned an awful lot. And it was intense. You had to be on your toes. You had to know a lot. You had to pay really close attention to your patient. And I found that really rewarding and stimulating. And so that was my favorite job.
Very neat.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Barring the whole full-time mom thing that came later on and grandma. But yeah.
Exactly, because really, when anyone asked me what my favorite job was, my most favorite was being a mom and mother.
Well, I'm glad to hear
that really was.
I was kind of joking because I thought that, with my parents and then aunt and uncle, that was probably challenging at times. But I won't make you get into that. Anyway, so my job history is the most limited out of all of you, unless you count translating the book, which might get published maybe in the someday future. I guess you could count that as a job, but regardless, my two jobs have both been unpaid because they were volunteer jobs, but one was working at the Snack Pack for Kids nonprofit garden, which was absolutely soul-sucking. I'm sorry, Ashley York, if you're listening to this, my boss, but yeah, it was the exact opposite of the mentally stimulating and having to always be on your toes that Grandma Rita was just talking about. And the job that I found most appealing out of my two options has definitely been translating at Heal the City, because it really did keep me on my toes always. And it wasn't like translating a book where you just kind of get to ruminate on whatever is, if you hit a snag, you just get to think, oh, what's the best way to translate that? And you can kind of reference some things and play around with it a little bit. You get to type in one phrase and you say, oh, that doesn't really look right, or that doesn't really capture this aspect of it. And then you go back and you think about it, and then you wake up in the middle of the night 3 months later and you're like, that's it! Instead, when you're translating live and in person for a class of 50 people sometimes, it is terrifying and exhilarating, because as soon as you hit a phrase that you don't know how to translate just immediately, you 100% have to start thinking about workarounds and ways that you can capture some essences with one phrase and then add on another phrase to capture this aspect of it. And also when people start rambling like I'm doing right now in the middle of a class, you have to be backlogging all of this information. It's something that I have never felt that engaged before and that present in the moment as when I'm translating in person. And I think that even if I had had 5 other summer jobs before then, that would still be one of my favorites.
That's interesting.
Nice.
Yes.
Thanks.
I think that would be.
Yeah.
Most, don't you think you hear us saying that the jobs that make a big difference are the ones that felt the best to you or that you liked?
I'm sure someone has said something like that before.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought of that as a terrifying, exhilarating thing, but that totally makes sense. You're just doing it on the fly, and that's a much more mentally there seems like a lot more mental gymnastics that's going on there than I would have thought of.
What's really horrifying is that there is always at least one bilingual person in the crowd.
Yeah, who would
they're going to correct you.
Yeah, has a better idea of how to say it. Yeah,
yeah, and or not even just a better idea of how to say it, but if if the person giving the class just like rattles something off, like, oh gosh, one of the first classes I translated for, this lady said, yeah, this friend of mine, she can be a great sounding board for me. And I was like, what the heck am I supposed to say in Spanish that is the equivalent of sounding board? And so, you know, if there was nobody bilingual in the crowd, I could just like skip it. But because there's always someone who knows
what they say.
Yeah. You're just like, oh gosh. And so I was like, punto de referencia, a reference point. Yeah, that's great. Close enough. Yeah. But yes, I think just the general trend that I've observed and in our conversation is just that the things that we enjoy most are the ones where we get to make a positive change in someone's life, you know, directly with that person. And also where we are feeling really, truly engaged, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good thought.
Yeah.
Also, can I ask a super short follow-up question for Grandma Rita? So the way that nursing training worked, how was that different when you started versus how it is today? And also, how did it change as you were going? Just purely out of my own curiosity, because I know that is something that has evolved a lot over the past, you know.
And I think decades. A lot of that has to do with the development of technology. And when I was in training, there was really limited technology. Really, you really learned everything, and it was hands-on. It was just there, but you didn't have as many possibilities that nowadays. And I have been out of nursing so long that I have no idea really what it's like now, what training is like
for like new nurses,
at all. Yeah. But I can imagine that it is, totally different.
Yeah.
In presentation and practice. Yeah. I would think it's totally different. Yeah. I hope they haven't lost the core belief, though, that you're doing something to help someone.
Yeah.
That you haven't lost that.
Yeah. It seems like, thankfully, that's pretty pervasive in all of medicine.
Good.
But
yeah, I don't know. A lot of the people that I went to undergraduate with who were going into nursing, they did it because they were like, I want a job that pays well-ish, but I don't want to be a doctor because that sounds like too much work. There were very few people who were like, I want to be a nurse because I want to help people. Those people always kind of went into like doctoring as, you know, physicians or law or stuff like that, which I don't know.
I guess I always saw it I don't think I knew many people that were going into nursing at Hendrix, oddly. But just like on the opposite end of it, like people who were just finishing their nursing training. There's definitely more. Maybe that's like something that is instilled into people on the road.
Or maybe they just get weeded out.
True. Yeah,
I would totally agree that you get it as you go, because I don't remember going into nurses training because I really wanted to just help people. There was a vague notion that I wanted to do something that involved people, and that it was the medical information was new and exciting and could make a difference. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember that this was my thought. I'm going to go out and help people. Mm-hmm. But you got it as you went along.
That's really neat. This is a really cool part of this.
Yeah.
That's
and you really figured out that that's exactly what you were doing. Mm-hmm. You were helping people.
Very neat. Well, Grandma Rita, you get the honor of the big old question today. Would you like to take us away?
Okay. Well, your dad told me this was a big old question, so
we gotta trust him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been on the show before.
Yeah.
Well, and just recently, I think I mentioned that I have sort of reconnected with some of my classmates, and one of the big thoughts that they've been thinking about and kind of going over is, what was segregation like for us, and what did we really think about it? How did it affect us? And what I want to know is how it is affecting your generations now, and how that is different than when I was in high school or whatever, or college even. But in what way is your thinking different than what mine was when we were going? And since you don't know for sure what mine was, I will just tell you.
Go for it. Please do.
But, and this seems to be a consensus so far among my classmates, is we didn't think about it. It was something that was there, that was not a big thing to us at all. We didn't feel like, I mean, if we had a black classmate, if we had to deal with somebody black, it wasn't a big issue for us. It wasn't something that we really even thought about very much. We did not even think about the fact that probably there was a whole bunch of people, black people, who did not have the opportunities and the freedoms, the whatever for us. Just as an example, we had in Leavenworth, where I grew up, we had at that time, which I didn't even realize at the time, but there was a special swimming pool for black people. There was a special place for them to sit in the balcony of the theater. And just as one of my classmates says, there was this sign that said colored. And it just said colored. Mm-hmm. And he was a kid, and he thought it meant that our theater was a very colorful, theater.
Yeah.
And he thought, hey, I'll go sit up there because that's where it's the most colored.
Oh,
that's really...
No clue.
Wow, that is very
anything
illustrative of just how, I don't know, pervasive it was that you wouldn't
that you
think
don't
about.
even think about
Yeah.
it. You didn't consider
and also
it
just
even.
childhood innocence of
Right.
well, there's no
Yeah,
that thought of like certain people have to go up there just didn't even cross his mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we even had a special black Catholic church.
Wow.
Which is like an oxymoron. I mean, really, how do you, So anyway, so I want to know how your perspective about black people differs. I know it differs. I mean, I know it's very different.
Yeah. Noah, would you like to go first on this?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, okay. So the first thought that came to my mind was just, and now it's slipping away. Oh, what was it?
I can hear it.
About what you just said. It's like, it was something you just said about, just how, like, whenever, like, we were going through school and learning about, segregation, and, you see all the pictures of, like, the colored sign over a water fountain or something, or on a movie theater or theater, then it feels like really weird because it's a foreign concept to us, because we're like, I mean, just to like, very directly say, okay, well, people of this color can go here, people of this color can go here, and there's no mixing, seems very strange. But you're talking about how, it wasn't something that you guys thought about a whole lot. And it was, I mean, it's weird to think about that was not like a shocking thing, because it was just how it had been since.
That's the way it was.
Yeah. And then also that, if you had a black classmate, that it wouldn't bother you either, because I think a lot of times whenever people from our generation look back, they think of, like all this animosity and everything. Because like, oh, well, obviously that's the only, like, if today someone put, okay, well, colored people go here, white people go here, then it would be like a very, negative thing. And that person probably would be a very, angry person.
Yeah.
But, for you guys, it was just part of your existence, and it didn't necessarily mean that you, looked at anyone of a different color and went, oh, well, that person is, lesser or doesn't belong here or whatever. And it also didn't mean that, like, you guys just looked at those signs and were like, oh, that's that's horrible. I can't believe that this is going on, because it was just a normal thing. I mean, at least from what you're saying, that's really interesting. Today, it seems like, we've moved away from that a lot. And I think that's healthy. I think that there's still some, like, coming from living in Memphis for several years, there's still some, even if it's not like directly written out in signs, I think I don't know, I'm not the perfect source for this, so take this all with a grain of salt, because I've only lived there. I didn't go to school there, I didn't do anything, but there's a little bit of division there still. Like, it's, and it's not coming just from any one particular group or anything. It's just kind of, there's this weird tension sometimes in areas of, like, like there was, like a record shop that one of my friends went to, that she wasn't welcome in because she was white. And then there are, like, plenty of, like, basically, there's, like, the Memphis proper is fairly mixed together, but then, like, some of the nicer neighborhoods outside are, like, completely just, like, almost entirely white. And there is definitely a lot of my friends there who, have any color of darker skin talk about, like, they'll go there and they just get a lot of, like, everyone just kind of stops and, like, watches them as they go by, because they're just, like, not really sure, like, you don't belong here.
There's that tension.
Yeah, that weird tension. Yeah. And but the one, like, flip side example of that, well, two examples. One would be, as far as, like, I mean, this may just be my experience working in the ER and stuff, but as far as, like, religions go, it's like completely the opposite. Like, there is a surprisingly large Muslim population in Memphis, and it's just very accepted. There's not, like, a lot of Islamophobia going on. There, like, Christianity is a huge deal there. But it's, like, very different types in different areas and different churches, and they're all, pretty accepting of one another. There's, there are lots of people of other religions or who aren't religious, and everyone's just kind of, like, that's somehow has, like, never been something that I've seen, like, a major, like, cultural divide in Memphis. Which maybe I've just missed it entirely. And then, like, the cool example would be, like, Memphis Rocks, which is a climbing gym in Memphis, that's put in, like, definitely a less nice neighborhood, like, less affluent neighborhood than than most places that are of that, fancy of a caliber. But it's cool to see people who, obviously are not usually comfortable being around people who don't look like them, from all different groups, and not always for like, evil reasons or something. I mean, sometimes someone has just been treated, like, maybe someone from a black neighborhood has only ever seen, a couple white officers who treated them poorly, or had, like, that one teacher who just didn't treat them like a real person or something.
Yeah.
And so they all hang out together, and kind of, there's just this, like, kind of all of the tension kind of gets, like, dispelled a little bit. And, like, you'll have people that feel uncomfortable and they climb a little bit, and it's like they get distracted and do something cool, and then they get down, they're like, oh, like, everything's fine. Like, I don't know, there's this nice, like, feeling of things are less tense, and everyone kind of, like, has more of a conversation with each other, which is cool.
When you feel like you're about to die from falling off a rock wall, that kind of puts things in perspective.
Yeah. Which, to be clear, rock climbing is very safe, especially indoor rock climbing.
No.
But
yeah.
A little editorial.
Yeah.
Okay, so to give my answer,
sorry, I was really rambling.
That's fine. My experience and sort of, I guess my experience would be the best way to put it, of racial tension has been in 2, maybe 3 stages. So the first being, I just was totally unaware that it existed. We had people of color in my class at St. Andrews, and it never even occurred to me that it would be an issue until maybe fourth grade. And just to backtrack, I think that it was never really thought of it as an issue just because our parents never even talked about it, for better or for worse. They never said this is an issue that, is still going on in our culture today. But they also never said like, oh, gotta watch out for those people of color, So then in maybe fourth or fifth grade, we were watching this documentary about Rosa Parks because we had been learning about, the Civil War and then that tailing into the Civil Rights Movement later on, like a century and a half later. Ooh, that's sad to think about. But anyway, so they were like showing the pictures of places that said like colored whites, and I was just like, gosh, how antiquated. And then they showed an interview with Rosa Parks, and this was like a recent film, and it blew my mind to think that it had happened that recently, that like the civil rights movement was just kind of trailing off as my parents were being born. To me, it had seemed like as distant, as far removed as like ancient Jerusalem stuff. And so that's when it really kind of clicked for me that like this is not something that is ancient history. This is something that has happened really recently. And then as I went to high school, and especially as I started exposing myself to these ideas presented in books like The Hate You Give and The New Jim Crow, especially, both of which I read in college, it really made me realize this is something that is still going on. It's not history at all. It's something that we are still seeing the vestiges of in our own society. And then looking back, I could see how it had really been a thread throughout my entire life without me realizing it. Much to my horror at the time and still today. But I realized that while there were people of color at St. Andrews, the amount was much smaller than just pure white people. Like all other ethnicities combined were still in the minority. The majority was just white, Caucasian. And then when I went to high school, in my advanced classes, that was almost entirely, again, white Caucasian people of like middle upper class. Whereas, and even though it was probably like 50-50 or even 60-40 people of color to Caucasians in the high school overall, the what are considered lower level classes, the not advanced classes, that's where the majority of the people of color were, and then the white people were in the upper level classes, just because it's kind of the track that society puts us on, because statistically speaking, people of color are given less good jobs, so they end up in lower socioeconomic statuses. They end up having kids that don't have as good educational opportunities, so they end up not being as challenged, and society, because it expects less of them, they feel like they can be challenged less, even though that is totally wrong. So they end up being shunted into this path of lower achievement that they were not destined for, but that society has made their destiny, so to speak. And then, going to college, I realized that there were definitely, going to, the tiny private college that we did, definitely a lot less people of color there for the same reason. And so that is the stage that I have been in and continue to be in, where I see it as not history, but something that I am confronting every day, but thankfully in a way that I am a spectator, and as such with a duty to do something about it, instead of being a victim of it because of something as arbitrary as skin color. Does that answer your question?
That does, and it points up the huge difference between the atmosphere, the feeling of my generation, which actually is 2 or 3 generations less than yours, but that it was not even something we thought about. And actually really almost didn't see it. You know, it was just, it wasn't that we wouldn't accept a black student in our class or that we wouldn't associate with a black student. It was that we just did not even think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Also makes me think a little bit about how the the societal constructs, and especially things like I don't know if societal constructs is the right word there, but things like having the, you know, official segregation and everything is, you know, even if that, you know, is a terrible thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone thinks that way. You know, like everyone's not thinking like, oh well, those people need something that isn't as good as these people, or they don't deserve it as much. It's just that is the way that things were set up, and then like as we continue, you know, existing as humans and growing as a you know, species, sometimes we realize stuff like that. We're like, oh, that probably shouldn't be the way that is.
Yeah, that's and actually like, really stupid.
Yeah, and in fact, for the majority of people, they're like, that just goes. Actually, I can't believe I had never thought of this before, but that totally goes against, you know, the way that I actually think. Like that doesn't make any sense. Why do we do that? And then they try and get rid of it. So
I've often thought about, and I've seen this through the years, through generations, is if we could just leave it all up to the kids, everybody would love everybody.
Yeah,
because
actually,
we just, you know, and the younger we were, the more accepting we were. And there was no difference. You know, I remember David bringing home his friend who was black. And it was, I mean, I don't know that he even saw that he was black. I mean, he wasn't even different.
Yeah.
He was his friend.
Yeah.
You know, and my brother had, even in our generation, Kenny, one of his best friends was a black kid. And we even as a family, I don't remember even thinking, well, there's nothing strange about that. He's just a nice kid, you know?
Yeah.
But I suspect that some of the older people around us thought, whoa, what's he doing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really interesting. That's really cool to hear about you, like, growing up in that time period and being a kid and just, you know, being fully accepting of everyone. And then as you grew up, all those changes began occurring, which kind of makes me think maybe, yeah, like what you're saying, if you just leave it up to the kids.
Right.
Everyone just gets along.
They see everybody the same pretty much, you know. Yeah.
So our lesson for today is leave society up to the kids, except for maybe the economy.
This might be a little too much bubble gum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest, Grandma Rita. This has been
welcome.
A pleasure. I will go ahead and start rambling the credits. This podcast is created by the three of us, written by absolutely none of us, and edited and produced by me, Joshua. Hopefully, it's also listened to and enjoyed by you, but no pressure. So join us next time as we unravel more of the world's big questions, or maybe just get tangled up in them. We'll see how things go when we get there. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas on how we could make this podcast better, send us a message at littlemiddlebiggle@outlook.com. Love, thanks, and T-Rex hugs from all of us. We couldn't have done this without you. Say bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.